Good morning. Happy All Saints Day. This would be a great day to honor the saints who have gone before us, as Hebrews says in chapter 12, our cloud of witnesses. However, Halloween was still on my mind when I wrote this sermon, so you'll have to step back one day before the time changed. And when I was writing this sermon, you can't look out the window into the neighborhood or read a sales ad or do just about anything without being accosted by scary jack-o'-lanterns and skeletons and ghosts. They're everywhere. Even children grow dressed up as them. So it's this stuff is on your mind. What it brought to mind was a recent trip that I took. I often enjoy taking my camera and going to cemeteries early in the morning. I know that sounds a little creepy. But when the sun's coming up and there's still maybe a fog in the air, it makes for some really interesting pictures. And so I can get some great pictures. I can see the art of hand-engraved tombstones from maybe even a century ago. I can see great monumental structures honoring the dead and take some time to reflect on my own inevitable future. A few weeks ago I got up early and went to the Woodlawn Cemetery on South Francis Street. This is not the oldest cemetery in Jackson, but it's close. And it is huge, about 93 acres to be exact. There are many amazing pieces of art to look at, including statues of Jesus and angels, etc., on top of gravestones. I would suggest that you take a drive through there sometime. I'm always amazed by the super expensive monuments lightly scattered among all the ordinary ones. Did you know that the average walk-in mausoleum costs about between $200,000 and $500,000? You pay all that money, and you still can't control who moves into the neighborhood. Who are you trying to kid? Is the rusty coffin and the expensive worm-eaten suit worn by the rich worth any more protection than that provided for the poorest people right next to them? Some of those cheap headstones are still standing tall, strong, and readable, when the mausoleums are decaying and falling in on themselves. What an obsession we have with remaining important, even after death. Like many others, I've always been drawn to the elaborate burial chambers in Egypt. Thanks to archaeologist Howard Carter in 1922, King Tut got the whole world intrigued in that sort of thing. I was watching some specials during COVID when, Netflix runs wild. And just with Kara and Jamie, we've been watching a lot of the Egyptian archaeologists, that sort of thing, different specials on. I recently learned that many prosthetics have been found on mummified bodies of ancient Egyptians. They weren't really for use, except for maybe one or two, but to fill out the wrappings. They have found feet and legs and arms and fingers and fake noses and fake ears. Some of them were made from cartonnage, which is a kind of paper mache. Some were made from straw, some were made from wood, and some were actually made out of bronze, among other things. They were not used by the living, but they believed that the theology around Osiris, god of the dead, insisted that the mummified body be whole for function in the afterlife. So if they were trying to, if early in their life they may have had a foot amputated, or they lost a finger, or got an ear chewed off in a barroom fight, then it was the job of the morticians and the family to make sure that those pieces, in some way, were good enough and wrapped in the mummified way that the rest of the body was, that they looked like they were going into the afterlife whole. So they wanted to make sure that they were going to be able to function fully. They tried to mummify the body to preserve all the features, so that in the afterlife they would be recognizable. However, if you've seen any unwrapped mummies or pictures of them, you would have to agree that ancient Egyptians were either the ugliest people on the planet, or the preservation technique wasn't foolproof. It's interesting that humans have always cared about how they're going to appear long after we're gone. We spend $900 to $9,000 on a casket just to put our bodies in, to put it in the ground, a box that's going to hold us in a place where nobody's going to see us, a box that people are only going to see for maybe 3 days at the most. We surround it with thousands of dollars of flowers, and not just the family. It's friends and family who send them, and you come into the funeral home, and there are just thousands of dollars of bouquets up front. It's beautiful. There are concrete vaults that hold the casket, and they can cost anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000, depending on what amenities you want. I don't even know what that statement means. It is a concrete box to hold your rusting coffin in while you rest in peace, if you want to say that, or rest in pieces, as it were, for some of the Egyptians. However, 1,000 to 10,000. What does it mean? That it was dependent upon the extras. I don't know what extras would be, and for some of you that have just gone through that or had to bury a loved one recently, I don't want to be flippant about that, but I'm interested. I would be interested to know, what is the difference between a concrete storage box and the one next to it? What would make it worth more? They don't even get me started on the range of gravestones. Just a flat, mow-over style stone. The ones that lay flat so that the people who are mowing the graveyard don't even have to weed around it or have to mow around it. Even those stones cost around $1,000, and that may not even be inscribed. What's the purpose? Why pretend that it matters? Bodies will decompose and mausoleums will crumble, and we will stand before God, who, unlike Osiris, will recognize us. We'll all be on equal footing. But this is not a sermon on the evils of funeral homes, but it helps us think about the following scripture. Matthew 23, 27, and 28. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. Jesus was talking to those who start this charade long before their last breath. We, as them, are often wearing a mask or a costume that is much different than what's on the inside. We can fool some of the people, some of the time, but we can't fool God. We portray ourselves as the life of faith, but often are hiding the stink and the horrible disfigurement of sin, which is deep inside. No prosthetic heart or whitewashed lie can be hidden from God. Are we who we say we are? Luke writes in chapter 12, verse 2, There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. No matter how much we hide it, no matter how much mummy wrapping we have around us, no matter if we take this dead body and we dig tunnels down into the desert, like they did for the ancient Egyptians, and they put in all kinds of ways for people not to get in there and for the body to be able to remain at rest. No matter how elaborate, how many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars that we could spend to cover up the fact that we are just another body decomposing. Our lives are the same way. Nothing that we do, no matter how elaborate, can keep our lives hidden from God. The deep parts, the parts that we don't show very often. We often will say things and do things that honor God outwardly, while inside we're fighting this battle of a life that is not right with God, a spirit that is selfish, something that's full of sin that we've been trying to hide, but God sees it. What are we hiding from? Do you think that God can't see that we're faking it? So we are going to eventually answer to God for who we are and what we've done. And that's even that deepest part that we try to keep hidden. In 1 John 4:20, he says, Whoever claims to love God yet hates his brother or sister, is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. Let me read that one again. That was a powerful one. 1 John 4:20. Whoever claims to love God yet hates his brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. Luke 6:46. One of those haunting scriptures. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do what I say? We cry out, Lord, please do this, and Lord, I am with you on this, and Lord, if you would give me this, then I will give you this part of my life. And yet, we don't do what we're going to say. Lord is a word that means that we are subject to somebody. They are over us. And so I call them Lord. I call God Lord with the intention of saying, I will do what you say because you are the one that's running this whole show. But there's times that I try to run the whole show myself, or I know what God would have me do, and I do just the opposite. And God's saying, why do you call me your master when you don't do anything that I ask you to do? Interesting. Watch the news. Look around you at work. What do you see and hear in the name of Christ and Christianity that is just being used as a cover-up? Every time we see it, we hear it, we feel it, we need to stop and take a deep look within our own selves. What are we hiding? What have I whitewashed over in my own life? Well, this next scripture is pretty harsh, but I want you to think about this. Think about the people that would, if you were to ask them if they loved God, if they went to church, if they consider themselves a born-again Christian, whatever. I want you to just listen to this. But mark this. This is 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 5. But mark this. There will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money. They will be boastful and proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. And he ends this by saying, have nothing to do with such people. Now, I wanted to point out one small thing, because we're talking about abuse and boasting and love of money and unforgiving, slanderous people, and all of a sudden you see disobedient to their parents. In that culture, if you were to strike your father and somebody was to see it and report it, it had the same sentence as if you had killed your father. There was a huge piece of that culture, both in Roman culture as well as in the Christian culture at that time, the Israeli culture, that said, you obey your parents, you listen to your parents, you treat them with respect. So to them, that was one of the big nasty ones, and so that's why that shows up when Paul writes this to Timothy. The next thing I wanted to talk about was that it says having a form of godliness but denying its power. In his commentary on the book of Timothy, William Barclay writes, they retain the outward form of religion but deny its power. That is to say, they go through all the correct movements and maintain all the external forms of religion, but they know nothing of Christianity as a dynamic power which changes the lives of men. Christianity has become, it's kind of a club. It's the club that we use to be looked at by some people in a positive way. Just like if I was a Mason and I had a Masonic ring that I wore, that I walked around, and every time somebody saw that, they knew that I was part of this group, and so it changed my status in some way. If I go around saying I'm a Christian or I'm born again, that puts us in a certain category where people may not ask us the hard questions, and it helps people look over some of the things we do and some of the things we say. They go through all the correct movements and maintain all the external forms of religion, but they know nothing of Christianity as a dynamic power which changes the lives of men. Again, that was according to William Barclay. This is not a new phenomenon. I don't want you to know that. It's a daily struggle. So throw away your papier-mâché halo. Open up, exposing the stink of your sin to God, and be real with Him. You are not hiding anything from Him anyway. He wants more than anything for you to be real with Him, because He's always been real with you. Have a great day.